And I saw your tweet. Oh, I saw your tweet. I'm like, and I got up and I got ready. So thank you for those reminders. They are very helpful. And I saw your tweet. Am I stuck?
I am. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Yes, I was trying to connect to the YouTube and I think there was a glitch in there, but I'm sure everybody can hear you, right? Did everybody hear her? I'm sorry. So thank you, Sandy, for joining. I know you're one of the ones who is always here with us, so I'm glad you're here.
Hi, good evening. I'm Tatiana from New Jersey, and I have been here a couple of times, so I'm happy to be here with you all, even though I do have a deadline at midnight for a paper. So
I'm so sorry. Well, we're hoping you get a lot of content during this hour. All right, who else?
Hello, my name is Aline Averett, and it's nice to see Sandy. We've been tweeting and exchanging ideas. Love your ideas. Nice meeting you all. Good to see you again, Emily. And thank you again for all the resources. It's amazing.
Yeah, we're all better together. Yes. All right, who else?
Hi, I'm Alba. I've been to a couple sessions. I'm in New Jersey as well. I teach ESL for kindergarten through 5th grade.
Nice. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carla. I'm from Minnesota, and I've been following you on Twitter, Emily, and all of your amazing resources, and I'm finally able to connect here in a session. I teach teachers at the University of Minnesota, but most recently also taught a newcomer class last spring to high school Afghan evacuees who were resettled in Minnesota. So I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you so much for being here. You'll see that we have a lot of teachers that have so much to share, and I'm sure you have a lot to share too. You know, now that you bring it up, I do want to have a session when it comes to refugees and immigrants. So if you want to shoot me an email and let's continue that chat on the side and see what we can out, because I love to have you share on this platform as well, if you can. Thank you. Who else is here? It's only 7:02. Come on. How about my guest speakers? You want to introduce yourselves?
Sure.
Yes, thank you. I'm Tamara Coburn, and I'm from Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Schools in North Carolina. So
Yay!
North Carolina, and I'm working with K-12 English learners in 82 different schools.
Wow.
Yes.
Hats off to you.
Thank you.
All right.
So I'm Maria Uribe. I'm also in North Carolina. I'm in Duplin County Schools, which is rural, very rural county near the coast. And we're in a smaller district. We have 13 schools, but we do have a significant number of ELs. We have about 2,000 right now.
All right. And I thank you for being here. Thank you for giving your time and for agreeing to come on board. But is there anyone here who does not follow the WIDA assessment? Do you all have the WIDA, the access test? I hope so. I wouldn't want you to be here, even though, I mean, there's so much to learn from the WIDA that it's, even if you don't use it, there's so much we can learn from it. But really today's session, what I wanted to do today was talk all about the WIDA. And I really wanted to have just us discussing and sharing our experiences and our tips when it comes to testing. I start testing tomorrow. How are y'all doing with testing? Have you started? Are you going to? You have to, because we're already in that window. Use the chat if you want to chat, tell us through the chat, or if you want to unmute. There's only 16 of us, so if you want to unmute, that's fine. I would like for you to keep your microphones off whenever our presenters are sharing, just out of respect of them. So you start on Monday. Some of you start Monday. That's good. That's good. So I'm going to have my presenters share, but and then I would like for you guys to provide your perspectives. We're going to go into breakout sessions after the presenters share, and I want to learn from you. I want you to learn from each other. What are best practices, ideas? Well, how do we reduce that stress about the testing? But again, thank you for being here today. If you didn't have a chance to introduce yourself, you can go ahead and use the chat. Tell us who you are. Where are you joining us from? My name is Emily Francis. If you have never joined, thank you for being here today. I'm a high school ESL teacher. This is my 11th year teaching ESL, and I love connecting with teachers from all across the country. I do believe that our job is kind of those isolated jobs. I hope I'm not by myself, but you feel like when you're teaching ESL, you're like the only one. Everybody has their PLCs in the school and you're by yourself. So I always feel like having groups like today help us connect with others who are having the same battles and struggles. And so today's all about the WIDA. So we are going to hear from our presenters. We will go into breakout sessions, maybe 15-20 minutes before the hour. And there is a form that you will get access to for you to type. Like if someone shares a very cool resource that you want to add to that form, you can go ahead and add it. It's broken by grade levels. But let's go ahead and get started. Who wants to start? I forgot how we decided. Tamara, was it you or was it Maria? I forgot. You're going to go first, Maria? All right, go for it.
Go first. Okay. All right. So thank you, Emily, for allowing me to share. So I have been working in ESL since 2009 in the US since 2009, and I was a high school ESL teacher. When I moved into the district level position of ESLE teacher and now EL coordinator, the assessment changed, and with everything being online, it added a level of another layer of stress to testing. And it was really difficult to transition, but we realized that the more we plan in advance, the smoother the testing session went. So we always tell our teachers to dedicate a big chunk of time, especially the schools that we have where we have more than one ESL teacher, to planning for the Access test. So just to give you some background, as I mentioned, my school district is in a very rural area. It's only 13 schools, but they're spread out, geographically. So like to get from one end to the county to another, it takes a full hour. We've got 2,072 MLs. I pulled that number this morning just for this meeting. And we have about 35 staff members between ESL teachers and ESL teacher assistants. And the bulk of the testing is done by them. So they're responsible for the majority of the testing. However, we have been lucky that our director of federal programs has prioritized access testing, and it understands the importance of not taking so much instructional time from the testing during the testing window. And they've allowed us to hire a group of retired teachers. Some of them are counselors, some of them are previous test coordinators who support our testing. So we call them the EL testing team, and it's usually 3 people. Some years we could only afford 2, but that's better than nothing. And they just provide support to those schools where there's only one ESL teacher, or they have a lot of students. Like one of our elementary schools has almost 400 ELs. So as you can imagine, it is a lot of students to keep track of and to test. So they focus their efforts mostly on those schools. We do yearly testing. I know that for different states, the guidelines are different, but at least for our district, and I believe for all of North Carolina, the testing training is a yearly requirement. So it's easy to forget, procedures. So even if it wasn't requirement, a requirement, I think we would still do it. It's always a good idea to come together and talk about the whole process. And, especially when we have new staff and, we've had a lot of new teachers the last couple of years. So it's very important to really spend time in the module on the WIDA side, explore the WIDA AMS side and all of that. And then I collaborate with our director of testing for the district. And then she trains the test coordinators at each school. One of the things that she emphasizes when she trains the school test coordinators is ensuring that the school is aware of access, that it's going on, because sometimes, I know in the past, some of the principals, made announcements through testing, or they didn't cut off the bells. And that was it's so discouraging, because, it's like, this is an important test, so we really have emphasized that all the school is aware of the access window. We are testing, and so school test coordinators share that plan with other stakeholders at the school level, and they ensure that the testing environment is appropriate. And then, imagine a student taking the speaking test and then they make an announcement. That's Terrible. I mean, it's almost, I would say, a borderline misadministration. So that was an issue that we were having. And so I think we've done so much better. So I do encourage you to communicate little things that you think may not be important. Take note. I always tell my teachers, take note of the things that you notice worked or didn't work, or we could have done better, and then communicate that with your school test coordinator at the end of the testing window so that you can prepare better for it. I think the success of testing here is just prepare. So another thing that's a good idea is to have an additional source of data. So in North Carolina, we have PowerSchool, which is our authoritative source of data. So most of the testing rosters come from there. But we also use the Elevation platform. I know some districts don't use it, so they can use Google Sheets or some type of form, some type of spreadsheet where you have a record of the students that are tested, the students that are absent, and that sort of thing. And that way you can keep track. It's just so that no student falls through the cracks, and we test every single one of them. So that's always very important. There's also a tool on the WIDA AMS. So, as a district administrator, I'm able to see all schools, but I don't know that all ESL teachers can see that, but there's a status screen on the WIDA AMS site where teachers can actually see like a graph, like a pie chart, where they see the progress of all the testing that's being done. So if you're not able to have that, talk to your test coordinator, because surely they do, and use that tool to monitor testing, especially when you're getting to the end of the testing window. So here in North Carolina, we have about 7 weeks. Is that about the same for everybody? Okay. I wasn't sure, but yeah, so towards the end of the testing window, like when we're like 2 weeks out from the cutoff, we always check that. We're making sure that we're not going to be like running out of time. And on the last day of the testing window, we're testing 10 students, or, that sort of thing. So, obviously some of the things we talk about during our trainings are like, consider the space you have available for testing, take an inventory of your devices. Space is very important because we don't want the kids to be too close. We've noticed that when they can see each other, when they're, especially the fourth graders, the third graders, when they're doing the speaking test, we've noticed that if they can see each other, they will giggle, they will get nervous, they will like climb up and not really speak into the microphone. So one thing we've done with those age levels is that we kind of have them, like, we build them a little booth of sorts in the media center, or we just have them face the wall, but they're not looking at each other. So I don't know if all the fourth graders are like that, but they are so self-conscious, like they don't want to be seen talking into the microphone. So for some reason, we've noticed that makes a difference, and the kids are more likely to, do better on the speaking test if they can't see each other when you're doing like a 5-student setup. With the newcomers, we always try to do it one-on-one or maybe two students in the same room, just because it lowers the affective filter. They don't feel as overwhelmed. So and then in high school, what most of my high school ESL teachers do is that they have like pre-conferences with students that are really close to exiting, and they ask them like straight up, what is something that we can do for you so that you are successful when we're taking the access test. So I know one student in particular said, I want to be by myself when I take all of the tests. Like, I don't want to be in the room with anyone else reading or writing all parts of the test. I want to be alone. We provided that accommodation. That student exited. That was amazing. Like, I'm so glad we did that. So with your older students, ask what they need, ask them, what can we do? How can we make testing less stressful for you? Because one thing that we notice is that there's a lot of burnout, for our long-term ELs. They are tired of taking that test and they're so desperate, and they just don't try their best because they just don't feel, they don't see the importance. So also communicating the importance of the test is important. And then, always have a plan B, have a testing plan, and then have a plan B, because, some things are going to happen. And what's another thing? Be flexible, adapt to an unexpected situation that goes along with it. And one last thing, make sure you test all your technology prior to the first testing session. Test the volume of the device, the microphones, just everything. Because that's another thing that causes a lot of stress when we're actually testing. And then it goes without saying, students need to be exposed to the demo and the practice items. So those are really our biggest areas that we focus on to try to have a successful testing window. I see that one year we did not miss anybody, because it always happens that when students move, communication fails. So that's one of the things that we've been focusing on. We test every single student. So, yep, that's it.
That's awesome. Yeah, we have some feedback there. It's just, it's what I really like the point that you emphasize, is to let the students know how important the test is, especially if they've been taking it for so long. And it doesn't matter if the teacher before me said it, it's okay for them to hear it again. You're going to take this test is very important, the way they take their time. So backup plans, I think I've always used my backup plan. It's better to be over prepared than under prepared, right? So Maria, thank you so much for sharing your tips. When we break into a session, I'm sure people will have questions for you, but Tamara, I'll give you the floor. Go for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And just like Maria, Emily, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this conversation and to join your wonderful cohort of collaborators and educators. So as I mentioned before, our district is I think the 4th largest district in our state in North Carolina. And we have almost 8,000 English learners across our district. And we don't ask our ESL teachers to create the access test plan that comes through our testing coordinators. I've been in another district in our state where ESL teachers were in charge of the test plan, and that's when that was my experience of doing the access test. But in this current district, it's possible for ESL teachers to contribute to the test plan or to suggest to testing coordinators some strategies that might work. And then sometimes the testing coordinators hear that and sometimes they don't. And so sometimes, our best ideas and best strategies don't get put into place. And on the other hand, some of our ESL teacher colleagues are overwhelmed with the idea of planning. And so they get to just rely on the fact that the buck doesn't stop with them, that there's somebody else in charge of that. And so they get to pass that off to the testing coordinator. So it kind of cuts both ways. I absolutely agree with Maria's whole context about stressing the importance of access testing. And I happen to be at one of our elementary schools today, and they're doing the access. And I met the teachers in the break, and they talked about how just a few days ago, in the middle of their testing plan, that they had communicated effectively. They shared and emailed with all the teachers who was involved every day, that somebody at the school decided that that was the day to do a huge whole school field picture, spelling out the letters of the school, initials in the field during testing, during their access test window. And so it is like this idea, yes, we have to communicate, and then also how do we make sure we're heard? And I don't know that I have really great answers to that question, because I think I have ideas, but then they don't work. There's a fire drill, there's announcements, there's all these things that happen. Yes. And so one of the things I would say, Maria's county, they find a few extra people, retired teachers, that they could bring in. And I think that at the school level, one of the best strategies I have, and it's theoretical because very rarely do I see this happen, but when we can get our colleagues to cover ESL classes so that we can spend all day testing and not have to test and teach, when we can get substitutes for our classes or colleagues to cover our classes, when we invite colleagues to become additional test administrators and test proctors, it becomes more of a school-wide effort. And I will forever be flummoxed at the idea that all hands are on deck for state tests, but only our hands are involved in a federal test. That is such a incongruent reality to me. And so I think the one thing that I would suggest, and I would love to hear feedback on how that works for you, is to just continually involve more people from the school. It is a federally mandated test. It matters to all of our students. And in North Carolina, in our state, where Maria and Emily and I are, and I think somebody else said North Carolina too, this test counts towards school performance grades. It should not. That is contrary to WIDA's, practice and what they suggest that we do with these test scores, but our state has decided that it does count for school performance grades. And so I feel like that's at least a leverage point for incorporating more people, more of our colleagues to that. All of that said, Maria laid out so many of the things I would have said. And so I'm going to turn my attention towards test prep all year long, which might not be the most immediate for your tomorrow, but I hope that it's pretty good for your next month when the testing window is over, because I like to think that we teach in our state from March to January is our teaching window, and February is our testing window. And so everything kind of starts now for planning for what's happening right after testing, because that test to score is such a far gap. It's instructional time right now. So some of the things I'll say, some of my favorite test tips really center on the speaking test. It's one of the places that, like Maria said, so many of our students don't seem to test the way that they seem to be able to communicate in classrooms, right? So we don't always like the scores that our students get on that test, that speaking test, because we think that we hear them speaking better than that. And so one of my things also involves the whole school. If I could get my way, I would say that every classroom, every quarter should have a recorded speaking assignment of some sort. Doesn't have to be graded. It just has to be access to the experience of pushing record, hearing my voice surrounded by 20, 30 others, and then pushing stop record and then submitting that or playing it for a friend. Just that very experience will let them hear what background noise sounds like, get used to the fact that I can be authentic even though it's towards an inauthentic device. So that's one thing I would suggest, is that we just invite our colleagues when we have our collaborations with them to record more often, create these opportunities, and at the very least create it as a differentiation strategy for multilingual learners, because while these kids are writing, these kids can practice speaking out loud, the same thing. I just think that's a great opportunity. Another thing that I love, one of my colleagues taught me, is called the clock method. I don't know, I call it the clock method. Anytime we're looking at a picture, and in our district, that really probably looks like a See, Think, Wonder, because that's one of the strategies that we've used frequently in our district. So a See, Think, Wonder is a picture prompt activity. If you need more from me about that, let me know, but that's not what we're here for today. So when we're looking, we look starting at 12, and I bet I'm going to go backwards for you, but anyway, 12 to 1 to 2 to 3. And we just teach them to look all the way around the picture as if it were a clock and make sure they hit all of the numbers. If it's a very busy picture, they need to hit like outside and then inside. But from kindergarten, we can teach students to be very slow and methodical in how they're looking so that they have so many things to say about that picture. And I'll just say it one more time. I do think that See, Think is a great activity for promoting students speaking at any of our grade levels. And so if we could, for example, layer a See, Think, Wonder with the clock method of slow looking, and then the recording of recording my speech for practice, I think we're going to start seeing our students do better. But the very, very most important thing comes from Mark Chapman himself. And if you aren't aware, he is like the WIDA's director of testing. And I've sat through several of his sessions when I was at the WIDA conferences. And he has said this every time I've heard him speak. Students should not hit stop record on the speaking test in the WIDA Access. There is no penalty for a pause. And the way I'm telling people now, teachers and students and even parents I've talked to, is we've all been there in a situation where like 3 days later in the shower washing our hair, we think of the thing we should have said right back then, right? So we know our brains catch up with us. And so I'm asking our students to just give their brains a chance to catch up. When they think they're finished speaking, fine, be finished. I'm not asking you for anything more. Take a deep breath, but don't hit stop record, because it won't record you forever. It will time out. And while you take that deep breath, sometimes our brains will catch up with us. There will be more to say, and WIDA does not penalize the gap. And so that more answer adds right into that higher speaking score. So that's kind of the bulk of it. I mean, we have other strategies that we have supported for writing. Like I really like the kernel sentence and expansion strategy from the writing revolution to support writing. It focuses on the WH questions as that scaffold. And if you remember from the old Can-Do's, WH was a level 1 scaffold point. And so it kind of, the writing revolution isn't a multilingual learner approach. It's just a mainstream approach. But this particular strategy, I think, has enough scaffolds in it to really work for our kids. And so if we do these things all year long, then we're helping our students embed some of these scaffolds. And then we get to that point where they use and lose these scaffolds. Use them while we give them to them, but they lose them when they own them themselves. And so when we want students to lose scaffolds, we want them to lose depending on us to provide it. And that's what I think some of these repetitions can do throughout the year.
Wow. I wrote a few things and I was about to tweet something when you stopped. So good.
Take a break. Our brains will catch up with us. Go ahead.
No, that's good. Hold it, because remember we talked about the breakout set, because I had 3 breakout rooms because we always do middle school, elementary, and high school. But I think we talked about having 2 breakout sessions, one for testing right now. So Maria, you're going to go with the testing right now. And Tamara, we're going to stay with, all right, I'm like you. As soon as I start the test, what am I going to do to prepare them for the next test? I promise you I do that. And so I do want us to have those 2 groups. But before we go into our breakout sessions, the rest of you who are here, there's 15 of us, 3 people have left us. Oh, I'm so sad. It's okay. But those of you who are here, we already heard from 2 experts. I'd like to hear from you. What are your tips? Like today, I took a picture and I haven't been able to tweet it yet, but my coordinator had all the domain, the tickets in all different colors. It was so cool to see like the reading in one, because as soon as I start doing the test, I know what ticket color I'm going to use it. So it was just so amazing to see how she thought of that. So those 4 different colors. But if you have any tips you want to share what have you done? What reduces stress for you students, for yourself? What are you doing to reduce that stress as you begin your testing? And I know some of you said you start in March. Who is that? Who starts testing? Alba, you start testing in March? That's your window? That's pretty late, isn't it?
Yeah, we start the beginning of March.
Oh, wow.
So, which for like our kindergartners, I feel bad because their kindergarten tests, they're just starting to tap out words and they're being asked to write.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that's so you probably get your scores pretty late after the students have left.
September, or last year we got them the very last day of school. Yeah, very last day of school.
Kill me.
We usually don't see them till September.
Oh my goodness. All right. So you use them as you begin your next school year. All right. So just unmute yourself. Tell me what are you doing? How are you preparing? Give us some tips. Go for it.
Okay, I'm gonna start.
Yes.
So how do I say this? So I think in the last several years, I just thought of WIDA as we're giving this test and we're done. And in the last 2 years where I've seen so much more on Twitter, I really look at it very differently now. So one thing that I did this year as we're testing, I explained to them why they're there, how many sections they are. And we do in Florida, we have to give it paper-based by law. So I'm hearing all this online stuff and I'm like, oh, it's so cool, but we have to give it's paper-based. But I have been telling the kids, look, this is very important. It's just show us your growth. It's not so much pass or fail, but we want to see your growth and it's important. And because I see the importance of it, I've been sharing that with the students so that they are aware of, it's not a good or bad. It's just, we want to see how much you've grown. They do want their scores right away. We don't get them till summer. So they don't know until next year what they got. And I am planning on using those scores at the beginning of next year and going over them and making plans like we had talked about it on Twitter. So I'm interested in hearing a whole bunch of other points of view and preparing and, having the kids be part of the test, not just me giving them the test and see you next year. So I think I'm growing in that point of view.
Who else? Go for it.
So we don't start till March, but I actually started, especially with my third, fourth, and fifth, just this week started to go over like some listening practice. And just today I realized, you know what? They need more practice with like just test taking skills. Like the process of eliminating answers that just, are not correct was like, today was like the light bulb went on. I'm like, it's on the computer, so they can't cross it off. But mentally you can say, it's not that one, it's not that one. And I'm like, oh my goodness, they are not even aware of these skills. Like forget about teaching, the academic concept, just test taking skills. I do color code my test tickets. That's just how my brain works. And last year and this year using Flip, which is a website. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. It used to be called Flipgrid. Now they changed it to Flip.
Okay.
So I will take either picture prompts from the WIDA sample tests that are online and, take a screenshot of the picture, put it on Flip and create the question for them, or just repeat the same one that's on WIDA, just so that they practice. The only difference on Flip is that they can re-record their answer if they're not happy with it.
Yeah.
So that's the only difference. I tell them that on the test, obviously they can only say it one time and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can limit how long it'll record, kind of like the WIDA test. So I try to use that with them a lot to get them just used to talking on the microphone. Oh, and one last thing that I discovered, I don't know about any of you, our microphones, our headsets have a little mute button on the cord. Using Flip, I discovered that a lot of them were fiddling with it and they were muting themselves. And so when I would get their Flip responses, it was like, So I wonder, oh my God, how many times did WIDA get a blank answer because they were fiddling with it? So now I'm actually clipping it to the back of their shirt so they can't touch it while they're recording themselves.
Yeah, watch me do that to high school kids. I'm gonna clip that thing so you're.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's true. I've seen them messing with that too, and it scares me that they're because once they get it started and they tell me that the sound is good, I'm not sure whether if they're muting it or not. So it's on them and the computer. So yeah, I like that. When you start doing your testing skills, because I do believe that they need to learn those testing skills. Do you start like closer to the test, or do you think is that something we need to do all year? Like Tamara was saying, what were you saying? Once a quarter, try to get everyone on board. What do you think, Alba?
Are you talking about the speaking or just like test taking in general?
Like you were saying, the test taking skills, like eliminating answers and,
I think it can easily be integrated in lessons that you do, especially if it's something that's like multiple choice.
Right.
Because I think, I mean, today was a fifth grader that just, there's 4 answers there. 2, are absolutely incorrect. And so now after I said, you can eliminate, and I did some of them as an example, the next one that he did on his own, he actually eliminated. So I'm looking, now you have a 50-50 chance, even if you don't know the vocabulary, if you can eliminate some of them, that gives you a better chance of getting it correctly.
Right.
So, I mean, when I took the SATs way back when, and you take courses on how to prepare, that's kind of like what they teach you, but I guess this isn't being taught that much in the classroom.
Right. I do agree that we could have throughout the year lessons where we teach them how to record, how to eliminate answers. That could definitely be embedded into our lessons. It's just, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we don't want to be too much to the test, but if we don't really teach them the logistics of, for example, an essay, I do teach to the test when it comes to the writing, because I can't just say, write an essay. Sometimes I don't even know what it looks like. So you really have to explain him, show it to them, make him write an essay so they know what the expectation is. So when I do the testing skills strategies, it's very close to the testing time. I mean, I do expose them all throughout the year, but very close to the test is when I do like, okay, you're going to take the test in 2 months, something like that. I think their stamina and their attention span is just so short that I just feel like if I say that all year, I don't know. Who else has something to share? Yes, go ahead.
One thing that we do, it's not about test taking, but we started doing as a county now, is to sit with each student and set goals with them. So we have a form for listening, speaking, reading, and writing, their name on the top, and then sit with them by October, and then put the score they have now, and then our goal for the next one. And then in January, you revisit, sit again. It is time consuming, but you motivate them. You say, oh, you speak so much English. Look at you speaking, score 2.1. You can do so much. Let's set a goal for 3.5. You can do it. And then in some schools, at the end, we get the scores like in May, end of May, so we can still show them. And then we do a celebration, we get ice pops for everybody, take them outside and celebrate. Even if they grew in one domain, you celebrate everybody, in their growth. So it helps, it motivates and encourages them.
Right. I do like the sitting there with them and having them really, I think in order for us to make them care, we have to show them how much we care ourselves. Like sit down with them. Like I draw the line from 1 to a 6 and I show them this is where a 1 is. This is where a 2 is. Look, you got one more level to go. It's like picture. It's like a picture for them to see the visual of how much they need to go. But setting goals is definitely very important. I use elevation goals. So we have elevation, and elevation will give you goals based on, you know, if they're a level 2, so now they're going to be a level 3. So we want them to grow one level. Of course, we want all of them to exit, but if we tell them to grow one level, then that's our goal, right? So setting goals is definitely something I do in my classroom, beginning of a year. But I'm starting to think, Tamara, that I may do it as soon as the test is done. I don't know. I may do that. You know, I don't know. I may do that before the year starts. What do you think?
You're right, Emily, that like their attention span, like it's not going to hold test all this time.
Right.
I'm really leveraging this, that it takes anybody at any age 21 times to learn anything, right? So we're looking at repeat, recursive, iterative exposure over time. And like when I say like once a quarter, it's not going to make a kindergartner exit, but it might help this entering kindergartner exit before the end of 5th grade, right? So I'm trying to really look at this long-term goal that prevents long-term English learners, but just really kind of tightly winds around some of these very critical skills. So you're right about the attention span. I wouldn't ask them to think about it every day, all year long.
Remember what I told you 8 months ago?
Right.
No, I don't remember what I ate for breakfast this morning. Like and my daughter wouldn't even remember what she had for lunch. I'm like, oh God. All right. So I want to honor your time, but I do want to honor your voice. So if you have something to share for the whole group, please do it now before we go into breakout sessions. Again, we're going to have 2 breakout sessions. One is going to be into Maria's going to help us with, I'm testing like tomorrow. What tips can I continue having, or next month when I start testing? And then the other group is going to stay here with me, with Tamara. We're going to start talking about, all right, testing is done. What do I start? How do I start working with my students for next year's testing? Anyone would like to share anything? Amanda, Jessica, Stephanie, my friends, come on. Yes.
Hi.
I'll share. Oh, sorry. Go.
Oh,
Go, either one.
Going back to the test taking skills. So I set goals with my students also at the beginning of the year. We set language goals, and then right now I'm in the process, because we don't start till March in testing. I'm in the process of revisiting those goals and also looking at their WIDA results from last spring, so that they can kind of see and feel where they're at, and encourage them to get up to the next level. And then some test taking tips I always give them is like practice at least twice, or not 3 times, or however many times you need before you start to speak, so that you kind of work out the kinks and get your fluency down. And then when you think you got it, then push the record button. And just telling them it's okay to say or pause, just take a deep breath and regroup, and then keep going. Another thing I do for the writing is I tell them to revise for 5 for word choices, for adding description, for looking at their sentences, starting them in different ways. Also make sure they have their transitions, and then go back to the prompt and make sure that they've done everything right that they're supposed to in the prompt. So and then that's a 5 because it's easy to remember their hand. And then I always tell them too that in the reading part, read the questions first, because that sets your purpose for reading. And then as you begin to read, if you come across a detail that connects to one of the questions, you can slow down, right? Read around it, read the question again, really make sure that you're understanding what it is, and then, make your best choice on your answer. So those are some test taking tips that I give my kids that work pretty well for them.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's definitely, I'm glad you're taking your time to make sure your students are aware of those tips. Thank you for sharing. Amanda.
Sorry, I'm great at jumping in right when somebody else starts talking. My talent. So one thing that I was just going to add that I started doing this year that I wish I would have done in the past too, because it's been, I don't know, pretty effective. It's for the writing specifically is giving my students samples of writing at each level, and then I had them work together in a group. And then we talked first about like what a level 1 includes and what things a level 2 and all of the levels. And then they had to work with a group to decide what level, because I just gave them samples that didn't have any information or any names or anything. And then they had to figure out together, and then they had to go and place those on our board. And then we talked about like if they were placed right or what. And so just involving them in the process of, okay, right now because I teach all newcomers, and my program or in my district, we have them in the newcomer program for 2 years. And so especially seeing my kids who have continued for the second year or who started midway through and are in their third year, then them seeing like, okay, now I was at a 1 before, I was at a 2. If I want to get to a level 3, then these are the things that I have to include, and knowing specifically, so it's not just some vague like a level that they don't know what it means. So I don't know. I wish I would have done that in the past.
That was so cool. And you know that I remember one of our supervisors used to do that for us. Like she gave us all the levels and we had to sort it. I couldn't do it. Like some of them I was being too rough and some of them I was being too light in grading, and it was so hard. So I'm glad we don't have to rate any of that writing. For newcomer screeners, we do have to, but I always have to use my cheat sheet because it's so hard. But thank you. That's a great idea. You know, show them those samples and have them sort them by level. I like that. I do see my students looking at that and taking ownership on them, you know, grading some papers. I like that. I think that's great. All right. So we have 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We are going into our breakout sessions. So there's 2, but before you go, let me go ahead and give you in the chat, because I know some of you might leave me, but don't. In the chat, you're going to have the document that shows all the grade level notes. So if you hear something or something comes up in the group that you want to add to it, please have someone scribe the notes and add it to the grade level. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. There's only one break room that is going to open. The other one is going to be here with us. So if you want to learn strategies that are going to help you for next year testing, stay here. But if you want to get tips on like testing right now, go on to this breakout session. So the break room is open, should you want to go there. So Maria, you will go down to where it says break room, and then there you go. She did it. I think everybody's staying here. Oh my gosh. How do I send Maria a note? Yeah, Stephanie, go ahead and talk, honey. I see your hand up. Go ahead. Tell us what you. I can't hear you.
I know. I didn't mean to have my hand up.
I did see you note in the chat though.
I was going back, so.
I saw the note that you put in there about printing out last year's scores and showing your students. So that's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing that.
I'll like 2 different PowerPoints. I'll send them to you and you can add to the link, or I can add to it tomorrow. But that I show my kids too when I do the test demo and practice, because it gives them some different strategies on how to take each part of the test.
Mm-hmm.
And that way then they say, and then they realize, oh, I can do this, this, and this to help improve my score. And it talks about like during speaking and writing, like adding conjunctions and, you know, like you just said, like the transitions and stuff like that to kind of help the students as well. And then I print off last year's scores so they can remember what they are, and we talk about them. And after we've gone over those strategies, we talk about what area could I improve on and what strategy did I just learn to help me improve in that area, and then set some goals. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I like that. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Tamara, is there anything you'd like to share with us? We got 10 more minutes.
I will tell you one more tip that I left off that I have also heard directly from Mark Chapman, which is the reason, if I just made this up, I wouldn't say it with such emphasis, right? But I heard it from the guy who knows. And he mentioned that modal verbs are really important. Now, what are modal verbs? Because not everybody knows this. These are the ones like can, could, will, would, shall, should, ought, might, may, might, right? Those are the modal verbs. And so if we teach our student to use modal verbs, then that can change their score by a level. Now, that's significant, right? So I heard him say this. I wish I had it recorded so people would be able to believe me, so that I could believe me, so that I could go back and make sure I'm saying it right. But for example, if they say, well, one reason this science experiment could turn out this way might be that is a level of sophistication in language that they're looking for. So I wouldn't do like the thing where the kid asks, can I go to the bathroom? And we yell at them that they should say may, right? Like, I don't like that one. But where we teach them to say what might be, what could be a reason, and then to kind of think around all of that reasoning, that there's a level of sophistication there that they like to see, and that changes things. And I just think that that alone is such a great tip, because that's a finite number of verbs to teach. Like, there's only a few of them.
I had to add that to our notes. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh my gosh. I think everyone is like, what? We just said that. Tatiana, you want to say something?
This just confirms my theory. I'm like I operate in a gray area like 24/7. Okay. So hearing things like that just confirms what I tell my students day in and day out across grades. Every freaking test has a hack to it. There's a way to get around it. Hay una jugada, okay? Everything. I tell that to my students who take the access. I tell that to my students who if I have to proctor the NJSLA, which is a state test and everything, I'm like, don't let the test rule you. You're going to rule the test, okay? And think of like outside of the box. They want our kids to think critically and everything. Why not offer connections? If you see a picture, it's going to probably be a picture about a yellow bus or something on the access test. Talk about what you know. It's like, okay, there's a yellow bus. Hey, that's the yellow bus that I saw the other day that almost knocked me out across the street or whatever. Just, whatever connections, cultural references they can make. And something that I have been doing like regularly this year is having students talk about a picture. So I'm sure we all do it. I think I see, I wonder, right? And then the connections. And I always try to center things on culture. Always, like the culture of the home, the culture of the countries that they come from and stuff. I'm like, talk about things that you know. And there was like something with I don't know, I think it was a bunch of flags in the picture, and then my student was able to identify her flag. Everything that she talked about for those 45 seconds or whatever was about her home country. I'm like, boom, that's a 6 for me. So I really try to take as much stress and anxiety away from my students by creating a space where they're comfortable. They can take their shoes off as long as there's not a fire drill, and and just let them just be relaxed with the test. There's no anxiety, there's no nothing. This is just like something that we have to go through, like we have to go to the doctors every year, and that's how they treat it. And they do go up a level every year. My more vulnerable students are going to be with me until 5th grade, and that's okay. Nobody's in a rush to leave my room. So that's it. And some students, I'm sorry, Emily. And some students say, so listen, if I pass the test, if I get a 4.5, that means I don't get to be in your class anymore. I'm like, technically, yes, you can move on. You don't need to be here. She's like, okay, so I don't need to pass the test. So I can stay here, right? So I don't know if they're like sabotaging themselves to stay with me. I don't know, pero they put it out there, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, Maria, you're right. The Valentina's Gonzalez picture induction model, I love it. I use that a lot. It could be done quickly. It could be a warm up. Here's a picture. I use the New York Times what's going on in this picture, because that one, it's actual photographs and actual events. So it has a follow up. So you're looking at a picture of something that really happened. And so you can tell students, you can build their vocabulary by saying, this was in India and this is what happened. And you can just build their vocabulary in their writing. And it becomes, you can make it a whole day lesson if you want to, but I've always done it like a warm up. Who else does that? Who else uses pictures for that? Yes. Yes, it's good. Good. It helps with their speaking, with their writing, with their partners, especially if it comes to a picture that they're familiar with. They want to talk to each other.
Yes. Our high school ESL teachers use it to promote speaking and obviously vocabulary building with newcomers. They especially use it with newcomers because, you know, when they have to take the test, it's like there's a lot of pressure on them. So it's kind of like a way to get them used to talking. So it's really helped.
I like it. All right. What else? So we have those pictures. We have the recording. When I have my students record, we use Canvas has that feature where they can just record, but they don't have the little timer thing. So I'm thinking if I want to make sure that they get used to the timer, I may have to use Flip. Don't you think? Yeah.
We know that Padlet also offers a recording. I don't know with the timer, right? But in Padlet, they can use their speaking as a way to respond. That we have to teach them the several clicks to get there. But especially for our classroom and content colleagues who might ask students to write on a Padlet, this is a great differentiation tool, right? This kid can speak to reply and exercise their best asset. So Emily, I have one more thing I can share. We have created in our district some key language use posters. If you think everybody would be interested in these.
What? Raise your hand.
Yeah. Here they are in the chat. And I don't know, Emily, if you want to show them, if you want to share the screen and show them, but we've created some black and white posters. Oh, you don't see, it's the second, the last link.
Oh, maybe slow sharing.
Oh, it might be slow.
Yeah, because I just see Maria's last about the picture.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, tell us about it. Well,
okay, let me tell you about them and hopefully it shows up. We created some posters that just highlight that this is narrate, inform, explain, and argue, and then sentence stems to support each of those. And we did leveled sort of different levels of sentence stems. And they're so that in our district, we can print them we have a print shop. They go on 17-inch cardstock. They're black and white. So the 17-inch, and then you put them all kind of together, like in a grid of 4 or in a row of 4. And they make really great classroom posters and help even our content and classroom colleagues who don't know these key languages to highlight them within regular instruction.
Nice. Look at this, guys. Who has stuff, something? Is it showing? It says on my end that you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Who else uses something like this? I really like it. And I was in a science classroom yesterday when the teacher had their students answer using a sentence starter like this. So having it posted up on the wall, I think it's a great idea. I may have to steal this one.
Yeah, I think I want to steal that from you, Tamara.
Yes.
You know, we branded it. Like you can't get away from our brand in the top unless you just recreate the whole thing. So why would you recreate the whole thing? So yeah, we're giving it away for free for sure, but we branded it. So.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And now I'm going to print it out because yesterday, again, like I said, I was, as I was doing something, of course, I'm busy with the access, trying to get the groups and stuff when the teacher says, all right, here's your sentence stem. And it was like music to my ears. When she said that, I turned around, I was like, she's doing what? She was having the students answer using sentence starters. And I was just so excited to see that. But I'm sure she had to come up with this sentence starter. So having a poster like that will make it easier for teachers to just pull it up and say, okay, I'm going to use this one. So thank you so much for sharing that. How have you seen your teachers use it?
Okay, so we started by distributing these to every ESL teacher. So they're in every ESL classroom. And now as we go around to different schools supporting PLTs, my district is weird. We call them PLTs, professional learning teams, when the whole wide world calls them professional learning committee. So with apologies, it's the same thing, but we when we speak with grade level teams or PLTs, we share these and try to get them out. I have asked our school leadership and our district level leadership to promote these posters so that eventually I'd like to see them in every single classroom, because I don't expect all of my colleagues to be language acquisition experts. That's our job. But I do think that this is the scaffold for teachers, right? Like, how do teachers scaffold for learners? Let's scaffold that for the teachers. Giving away ways to give away language is sort of my motto.
I love that. Yes, you just gave us a piece of something we can come into school tomorrow and say, look what I got. Make yourself look good. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing that. And my huge takeaway, there's so much good stuff today, but my huge takeaway is the mortar verbs. I'm gonna start looking into that. Like, I'm over here Googling stuff and trying to find that out, because if it's a game changer, we need to look for those tips to help our students, especially those that have been taking the test for so long that they may need that little tip. Like, hey, like for me, when I took the Praxis for ESL, I took it 6 times, guys. And just like you were saying, Tatiana, there's always a hack to a test. The last time that I took the test, and I swore that was going to be the last time I took it, I started from the very back, working my way to the front. Because somewhere along my looking for clues of how to pass this dumb test, I read somewhere that the hardest questions were toward the end, the ones that were worth the most points and stuff. So I'm like, well, maybe that's where my energy needs to be. And I did that. I started from the last question all to the front. That's it. That did it. Or maybe my confidence, I don't know what it was. But as a test taker myself, that little strategy helped me. So anything we can provide our students to do better in the test, why not, right? Would anyone like to share as we close? What's your what's your takeaway? Tell us. You can put it in the chat or unmute yourselves, because time's up. You're so quiet.
I did want to ask a question, if that's okay.
Yes, go for it.
I know some of you are in different districts. Is the access test the only measure you're using to determine whether a student exits or not? Because that's one of my biggest, I wish we used other measures, just because, since we're talking about test taking, not everybody is great at taking a test. Not everybody's good at taking a test. And like, we should look at other things other than tests.
We are labeling them, and we're providing accommodations and modifications based on that one time that they took a test. Anyone has anything to share? Do you guys use anything different? No.
Oh.
All right, I'm going to bring on board, and we talked about this. Someone emailed me from a DRC. That's the platform we use for our WIDA testing. They have something like that. It's kind of, it's aligned with the WIDA test, and it's aligned with the test, the can-do descriptors and all of that. But it's a test that you give your students every 9 weeks or so. And it gives you an idea of where they are and what is it that you can do to make them grow by the time they take the test in February. So of course, because it's I don't know if it's the WIDA model. It could be. I don't remember her mentioning the word model, but she said it is not from WIDA. They're basing it all from WIDA, but it's from DRC. And it's a purchased merchandise that I was just skeptical to bring it here to our group, just because she wants to sell you stuff, which if it's something good, like I want to look into it. If it's something that is going to benefit my students and my district, I will make my district buy it. Like I will beg them if it's something good. but I'm going to look into it. If you're interested, you may get an invitation to come join a group like this to hear about this product that apparently is a test. So it imitates the WIDA test, the access, until the test comes. So it gives you tips on what to do to better prepare them for in each domain. Does that make sense? Have you all heard anything besides the model? Do you remember the name of it?
I think the model is a WIDA test, but I know what you're talking about because they try to sell it to me too.
Okay.
It starts with an L. It's link. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yes, I know.
But there
what you're
is
talking
something out there. And I think
Yeah.
it's important for us to have those measures of testing before the access comes, because just by looking at their stuff is just doesn't give you a really good picture. But well, if you guys come up with something, or if your district comes up with something, share it with us. I'll be happy to email everyone. But maybe around September, if I dig a little more. LAS, is that it?
I think so. And I just Googled it, and it does say it's connected to DRC. So that must be.
Oh, you're so good.
Well, that's something I don't know a lot about it, but I've been around a long time, and so the early versions of that assessment were around when I started teaching, so it's interesting to hear that name pop up again here. But if you Google Lost Links, you can find more.
LAS. Okay, so what was it good back then? Is that why is this still ongoing?
I'm assuming it's been modified heavily. It was this was before required testing for multilingual learners, but it was used as a. So anyway, you can. I don't want to say anymore because I don't know enough about it. But
yeah, me neither. And when she emailed me about that, I really wanted to look into it. But like I told her, I said, when I test a product, for example, Saddleback, I started testing it. I personally love it, and my students flourish using Saddleback. So I ran to my district and I'm like, I want this for our district. Like, you need to get this. Saddleback has great books. So I need to know about it before I start asking my district to get this stuff, or to bring it here to you to ask you to get it. But we'll look into it. All right, 6 more minutes. Oh my gosh, y'all, I love you. Look at you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming this time of the hour. And if you have my YouTube channel, share it with someone who may need these tips. And these are always recorded. And please help me give a round of applause for Tamara and Maria. Thank you for coming tonight and sharing your wisdom with us. And yes, Saddleback is great. Yes, Tatiana. All right, hashtag PLC for number 4 newcomers. So follow the hashtag for news. Thank you for joining tonight. Love you. Keep doing the good work. Bye. Thank you, Tamara. Appreciate you.